I am Todd Yeary. I'm the Senior Vice President of Rainbow Push Coalition. I'm grateful to be able to share with you and to greet you on behalf of our leader, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., who is in Los Angeles. Last night, there was a gathering of folks who wanted to honor Reverend not only for a birthday. Birthdays come up every year. And sometimes one party feels just like another. Last night's gathering was different. Different because it marked a milestone of God's favor on one chosen to advance the interest of those who often have great needs but no voice. Speaking for those who are not in a position to speak for themselves. He gathered as a proud Q. The Omegas are in the house. Y'all, I know y'all probably don't want to bark and throw up. You can throw up some hooks. Y'all can do that. I'm an alpha, so I don't want nobody to get it confused. But it's Greek love. It's Greek love. We thank you for your service and your commitment, your sacrifice to support the efforts in the Bahamas. Last night they gathered to honor one who had sacrificed so much. And as we are on the eve of Reverend Jackson's 78th birthday a couple days from now, the truth be told, and we listen to his story, his perspective on longevity changed in a moment. When Dr. King was assassinated in April of 1968 at 39 years, 2 months, and a few days old. For those who had walked with Dr. King, old age took on a different perspective because of the nature of the fight for justice. Reverend Jackson often tells us that none of Dr. King's disciples expected to live past 39 because when you advocate for justice, it creates tension in the conversation. The fact that we are now about to celebrate Reverend Jackson's life 39 times 2 ought cause us to keep in proper perspective his long-standing commitment and proven credibility when there are tensions that must be resolved. There's been some inference, assertion that somehow or other in this conversation in the city of Chicago, Reverend has taken a side. And that is true, he has. It's the same side he's been taking for over 50 years. Not for those who are sitting at the table, but for those who are affected by what happens between those sitting at the table. And so if we want to be true about it, there is a side to be taken here, but they're not going to be on the negotiating team for the city or the union, but they're going to be affected by what happens in that conversation. They're not going to have a union card or a city government ID, but what happens in that conversation is going to have an immediate bearing as we look to this date of October the 17th. I want to be clear that we not lose the sense of the opportunity in the moment, even though the issues are great, the concerns are sincere, the matters are relevant, but the byproduct of failure in this moment is not about those who are sitting at the table, but those who are dependent upon a credible conversation amongst those who are invited to the table. I want to make sure that we don't get caught up in the energy and the excitement of the moment, because we live in a time now where conflict is actually paraded as a value to which we ought to aspire. It is not to be used as a club, but a fuel to inspire us to dig deep and figure out not how do we raise our issue, but how do we honor our issue, hear the other side, and find a collective way to cooperate and reach a resolution. Otherwise, we're just playing a game. We're not serious about the issues if resolution is not the objective. If we're simply trying to draw media coverage, trying to get sound bites in the press, if we're simply trying to say that somebody is watching us and really we don't intend to put our best forward, and today is October the 5th, then what we've done is we have become intentional co-conspirators, entrapping our future in the bodies of young people who want to grow up like those who are sitting over my shoulder, and we have now somehow couched it to say that this conversation is about justice. Let me talk to you about justice for a minute. The very need for justice affirms that there is a conflict that must be resolved. You don't need justice if there's no conflict. But you cannot achieve justice if those who are parties to the conflict take let me see how I change this now. Take positions for which they have dug in for the sake of digging in. And they really are about me and not about us. In Luke chapter 7, verse 36, Jesus is invited by a Pharisee one day to come by the house and sit down at the table. And it says that Jesus accepted the invitation, and when he sat at the table, he reclined. Let me talk to you about table talk real quick, because I got to go show my face at a funeral, get on a 2 o'clock flight, fly back to Baltimore. I know I'm in all kinds of time zones. Y'all pray my strength. Table talk is about conversation and not simply about yelling. How often have we sat observing engagements between parties and neither side can hear the other, because rather than talk, they yell? You're not going to resolve this by yelling. We're not going to find a settlement by screaming past one another. We have to be willing to sit down and have a conversation with someone that you know the moment you take your seat, you are engaged in a conversation with an adversary. But let me say to you, your adversary does not have to be your enemy. How do we take the tension that God has given us in this moment and use it to create something for which it could not come out if there were no pressure? This ain't about a position. This is about pressure. You don't make diamonds without stress. And if you're going to get a jewel out of this, you got to know how to leverage the pressure for a better outcome that cannot happen if all you're going to do is dig in. If one side or the other only digs in, you'll have the potential for a diamond, but really all you will have is coal. And you can't make a coal. Coal in mediation is like coal in the 21st century. It is an energy source whose utility is very limited. I want to say this real quick, and then I'm going to go to my seat. This ain't really about shouting today. It's about being clear about where we are. Dr. King talked very clearly about timing. If we're not careful, we'll take this moment and miss the timing. This is not about October 17th. As a matter of fact, I heard Mr. Sharkey when the question was raised the other night, why would you set the date so far out? He actually said it gives us time to negotiate. That must be a conversation that allows us not to use October 17th as a tool to manipulate, but to use it as a timeline for our best effort to make sure that our children and their families who rely on the system to work, they don't get trapped in this false target when there's not really going to be any sincere effort on the days between now and then. I want to say this to you. I want you to remember this because systems often fail not because the systems are flawed. Systems often fail because when somebody needs to stand up in the moment and do that which is not necessarily required but is necessary, they miss their window of opportunity. I believe in the right to organize. Workers' right to organize around common interest and mutual concerns is a principle for which there is no apology. Dr. King didn't apologize. Reverend Jackson has never apologized, and we don't apologize for it now. However, if we claim that right and do harm to the innocent, then we've missed the deeper understanding around why we organize in the first place. Dr. King talked about the fierce urgency of now. This ain't about October the 17th. It's about October 5th and October 6th and then October 7th. If we put our best foot forward, October 17th won't be an issue. Number one, none of us is guaranteed to live that long. We don't have time to waste. And so I want to go back to the conversation about why last night was so significant. Because when you recognize that every day matters. This young man, Brother James Small, standing here, our future is before our eyes. We cannot hold it hostage to untenable positions that won't lead to resolution. Council Fountain talked about it only having been 36 days and people have already forgotten what's going on in places that have been devastated. We tend to forget too quickly how we got here in the first place. We forget why education has been so essential to our identity as a people. It's not merely about trying to take a position and demand that which is right. It's to recognize that both sides have a responsibility to reach across the table and achieve resolution. That's what the civil rights movement was about. It wasn't just calling out injustice. It was finding a way to be able to reach across the table to an adversary, trying to make sure that your adversary did not become your enemy. Our children are watching. Reverend Jackson wanted me to share with you that he's going to be an advocate for the process. It's not about taking sides. It's about standing firm, making sure that both sides put the best of who they are on the table so that the negotiated settlement benefits those who have no seat at the table. So now that we've had the moments and the cameras have come and most of them have gone, just like the cameras left the Bahamas, it's now up to the fortitude of the people to sit down at the table and talk. If you talk, you'll find out you got some things in common. If you talk, you'll find that you have an opportunity to do some good, even while you're working out your differences. If you talk, you'll recognize that October 17th, instead of it being a target date for a walkout, it'll be the date that we celebrate the collective rallying around investing in the future of our children, their families, and their communities. Let's keep October 17th on the calendar, but let's not make it a day to be walking out. Let's make it a day that we will stand up, celebrate our children, invest in their future, and as Reverend would say, keep hope alive.